So, Jamie, a lot of my work is situated around incarceration, looking at hope and what hope means for women who have been incarcerated. Now, criminologist Shad Maruna, he's written a lot about incarceration, but one of the things that he wrote is talking about incarceration as a rites of passage, that when people are incarcerated, there is a sort of liturgy, if I can use, that
Absolutely.
people, are kind of identified in a particular way. They have different clothes, that there's a very prescribed way in which people go through this process of being kind of dehumanized, loss of identity,
Yeah.
and you look at liturgy as enacted narrative, I'm curious when a person is in that kind of setting of where they're living and they're enacting this narrative, what new narratives can be introduced? How can these new narratives be introduced in that setting?
Yeah, such a great question. It's funny that just one backstory is as a philosopher, I actually came to thinking about liturgy and formation because I read Michel Foucault's Discipline and Punish, which is in a way the sort of beginning of analyzing the prison in those terms. So I totally get it. And what's interesting, I've had a little bit of experience with a program of my institution at Hanlon Correctional Facility in Ionia, Michigan. And you can see that now it's an educational program. So on the one hand, there's empowerment happening because you are, knowledge is power kind of dynamic. But what also strikes me is this is so clearly a community of solidarity that's being invited to see themselves differently.
Exactly.
And it's because basically they are hearing a story about themselves that they wouldn't have heard otherwise. But it's not just in the content, it's actually in the rhythms of the experience. So I will never forget my friend Todd Chaffee, who's one of the directors of the program, when they were first exploring this and trying to set it up with the warden brought in the people who were going to teach, and he laid out all of these rules. And he said, this is how we interact with the inmates. And a couple of the rules were like, you can't call anybody by their name, you can't look them in the eye, and you can't touch them.
Yeah.
To which Todd said, we're Christians. We can't do that. This is what how on earth could you be a Christian community and not do those things? So what's interesting, I think that a Christian community just being the people of God, observing almost the kind of banal practices of being Christian, already is sort of subverting that other narrative. I think you're right. It'd be interesting for somebody, and you're probably doing this work, unpack, well, what is this other story that inmates are being formed and inculcated into, and to feel the tension between that and the gospel, I think is exactly the kind of pushback that has to happen.
I mean, one of the clear narratives that come out, or one of the pedagogical principles, penal pedagogy, but is if you make a mistake, you are a mistake, and it's like
it's a lie.
Always, it's a lie, and it's a myth. But the way the system works, both before a person is incarcerated and after their incarceration, it's almost as if you have this scarlet letter, this mark on you that doesn't get removed even when you're released.
And it's reinforced not because they're always just telling you that, but there are all these scripts and rhythms of the community that keep reinforcing that.
Right, and it's internalized. It's so many women who have been incarcerated and who are out who says when they look at me, they think, they know I've been incarcerated. It's like it's precisely what you're talking about, how folk are shaped and formed by these experiences, and it's so hard to kind of separate themselves. And so just what you said about a people belonging to God, what are the new narratives that the gospel actually invites people to identify with and to enact, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And what rituals of reintegration, as Shad Maruna would say, we're devoid of rituals of reintegration.
Yes.
What rituals of reintegration can we as the church?
And I've been so encouraged to see in West Michigan, where I live, there is so much good work starting to happen for returning citizens. Because ironically, people who have never been incarcerated also absorb that same story.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And impose that and project it. And
Oh, yeah.
what does it look like to have all of us liberated from that false narrative?
Yeah.